but let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, and welcome to our March 12, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting. We are here at OBS. We are joined by our superintendent, Dr. R.J. Weber, and the central office leadership team here in front. Let's get into our roll call, please. Ms. Stewart.
All right. President Wilson.
Here.
Vice President McIntyre.
Here.
Treasurer Campbell-Voitel.
Here.
Trustee Mazurek.
Here.
Trustee Meyer.
Here.
Trustee Prescott.
Here.
And Secretary Stewart. Here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That brings us to the adoption of our agenda, number 4. And I will hand it over to Ms. McIntyre, please.
Okay. I'd like to bring forth motion 83 that the agenda be adopted as presented. Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Ms. Meyer. Any discussion on our agenda before we adopt it? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you for that. That brings us to number, Vice President, please.
Okay. I'd like to bring forth motion 84 that the board accept the consent agenda items for approval as presented. That includes 5A, minutes of the February 27th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. 5B, minutes of the February 27th, 2024 closed session meeting of the Board of Education. 5C, overnight and or out-of-state field trip requests, which includes 5C1, NHS Boys Volleyball Tournament in Grand Rapids, Michigan from April 26th through the 27th, 2024. 5C2, NHS Varsity Gymnastics State Finals in Grand Rapids, Michigan from March 8th through the 9th, 2024. 5C3, NHS Europe trip to Germany, Czech Republic, and Switzerland from June 20th to the 30th, 2025. 5C4, NHS HOSA Conference in Traverse City, Michigan from April 17th to the 20th, 2024. 5C5, NHS Spring Break trip to Costa Rica from March 22nd through the 29th, 2025. 5C6, Hillside Middle School 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip from May 2nd through the 4th, 2024. 5D, the final reading and adoption of board bylaws and policies. 2006, Family Educational Rights and Privacy. 2009, Acceptable Use. 3008, Safety, Security Crisis Response Team and Threat Evaluation and Suicide Intervention Team. 3010, Substance-Free Environment. 4116, Staffing, Assignment, Layoff, and Recall of Classroom Teachers. 4117, Discipline, Demotion, and Discharge. 4118, Staffing, Assignment, Layoff, and Recall of all administrative and non-classroom instructional staff. 4119, Performance Evaluation. 4120, Performance-Based Compensation. 4127, Whistleblower Protection. 4140, Employee Ethics and Standards. 5E, Limited Open Enrollment under Section 105 and 105C, Schools of Choice for the 2024-25 school year. And 5F, Bill warrants totaling $3,177,723.05.
Support.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Mr. Mazurek. I will open the floor for discussion, and I'll start with noting that we did just within the last, I want to say, half an hour or so, receive a couple of emails from the union, the Northville Education Association, in connection with a couple of items that are in 5D. In particular, the ethics and employee ethics and standards, 4140, and I think the other one would be 4117, discipline, demotion, and discharge. I had a chance to look at that communication. I'm personally still comfortable moving forward with these policy changes, but what do other folks think about it? And Ms. Peck, I will ask if you can put some of this in context for us, just to set it up a little bit. But do folks have thoughts on proceeding in this fashion? Is that fine with folks, or questions?
Yeah, I would say we had a chance 2 weeks ago, right? We discussed it. We've had a chance to read the policy updates. I think the team has worked very diligently over several months and many meetings to adjust these policies, update the policies, and so glad to hear from Ms. Peck as well. But yeah, I really appreciate all the work that the policy subcommittee has put on this topic.
And I also, thank you very much. I mean, we talked a bit about that last week, and I appreciate that acknowledgement and everyone's diligent reading through and the discussion that's been had about it. The law has changed, so our board policies have to reflect the law. And so we need to make sure that that happens, which is why I would want to move forward. But I'm sorry, we keep saying, let you speak, and then we keep talking.
You guys are doing a great job. Everything that I would say.
Maybe the question is, can you put the capricious and arbitrary language kind of in context for us and what that means? I mean, my understanding is this sort of codifies or memorializes the existence, the kind of the current stance of things, but.
Correct. So
Yeah.
the arbitrary and capricious language is language that 2012 was kind of regulated out. So it became it regulated in as a requirement into collective bargaining agreements. It used to be this just cause was the standard for most everything and in all contracts. In that 2012 timeframe, that became arbitrary and capricious, or you can't discipline or terminate somebody for reasons that are not arbitrary and capricious. Our language here, that is still the standard that is in our contract. That is still, the standard that the board is allowed to choose. But it is now a permissive subject of bargaining. And so I'm just going to put the elephant into the room. Many of the policies that you're updating to come in compliance are permissive subjects of bargaining now, not mandatory, but permissive. And at some point, we might have some conversations at the table. I expect to have conversations at the table about those things as they impact collective bargaining agreements. And at that time, if we bargain different language, your policies and procedures would be updated. You can't have conflicting things, just like you can't have something in a bargaining agreement that's against the law. You can't have a policy that is contrary to a collective bargaining agreement.
And in the interim, we need to have something in place.
Correct.
So the way that this actually, the arbitrary and capricious means that if the administration takes position on disciplinability, the righteousness of discipline, the policy we would be adopting would be, unless the action was arbitrary and capricious, it stands. What the union wants is that unless there's unless there's just cause, there must be just cause for it to stand. Does that help clarify what they're asking for? And you can see why they think, and it's just simply a fact of legal day-to-day life, that arbitrary and capricious is, I mean, you'd have to say someone was throwing a dart at a dartboard and deciding which teacher to discipline, right? Like, we were drunk and throwing darts and we picked you, Mr. So-and-so, right? Like, they don't want the administration's voice to stand without just cause for it to stand. So that's what this got put back into the laps of the bargaining teams, is anything from just cause to anything we say goes, or arbitrary and capricious is real close to anything we say goes. And something in the middle would be, we at least had the preponderance of the evidence. So like in Title IX, if I say you violate child number 1, if I say you violated Title IX, that stands unless that person can establish the preponderance of the evidence didn't weigh for me. So there's different standards. You might have heard of, clear and convincing evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, there's all these standards in the law and they go from one end to the other. And the union wants just cause. And the legislature used to force arbitrary and capricious.
They did.
It mandated. So when our committee met, this is not language that we changed. Like, the disciplinability was, we just left it how the 2012 legislature dictated it. But we added such a long list of things that can get you in trouble that's why I think we got this. And just to be transparent, we did not, the three of us did not talk about this ever. that I can remember, right? Like you guys don't remember, like this whole subject.
Oh, that's part of
Yeah.
it. No,
No.
yes.
Arbitrary and capricious
Yes,
was not
correct.
something that we said, oh, we
Yes,
think our
correct.
colleagues should vote on this and bring this, like, we didn't even entertain that there would be another, like, I honestly thought this was just dictated by the legislature, arbitrary and capricious. Like, I thought that we had to do that. Like, because that's what it used to be. And
Well, so I'll just, as a non-legal person here, I'll say, as a board, we set our policy and procedures based on what we think is appropriate, right? The legislation has now said there are certain things that can be bargainable items in the future. It doesn't necessarily say you're going to bargain on them, but if we do bargain on them, then at that point in time, we would consider what changes might be appropriate. But I guess the question is for this board is, there was a team who spent a lot of time with legal looking at feeling that this was what we thought was correct and what we should go forward. And since we aren't bargaining yet, I think we should go forward with it.
yeah, I guess my take on it was I did think that we were talking to the union at some point in these. Did I make that up? Like, I thought that the union had
That was
some
about the,
approach to some of these.
the employee
The
ethics and
employee
standards.
ethics.
Right. But isn't today's email, and I didn't even see it till I was sitting here, but
There's
they're
one
saying
way.
that they didn't get to comment. I mean,
That's what they say.
one other, so not consulted or asked for input on these policies. I'm sorry, I didn't feel like we didn't ask them, and maybe we should have processed that in, and I'd be interested in the board's take on that, because certainly we don't want a second reading to get an email where someone says like, hey, we're stakeholders and we didn't get asked. So I feel bad that, if something should have happened there. The next point was, these policies, in our opinion, were written to purposefully undermine any attempt to negotiate these topics in the future. So I'll just say from my perspective, and then the next point says the timing of this shows the district isn't interested in working as a team. So I just want to be clear on some timing points. So first of all, timing, we started working on these policies, and I think I was really pushing for an employee ethics policy when you were on the subcommittee, or like started
Yeah, we
right
started
when
talking about that, right, as we started to switch. that
so
we
it
were gonna
started in
have-
December.
Yeah.
I think at the very end of December.
That would be
Not this
December
year,
of
this December,
21.
The
December a
previous,
year ago,
yeah.
right?
Or 22, December of 22.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
It's
But
got to have been because we
It's
were.
certainly.
we've been on the
Yeah.
committee for a
Something-
year,
Yeah.
so.
We
I
took a
know.
long time to do this, is the bottom line. So I understand why people might think the timing is sending a message, like maybe playing like a hardball-y type of a thing as we're going into negotiations. I can see why, from an outside perspective, that could be something that it seems like.
And also the timing of when the laws took effect
I
as
was,
well.
I was just gonna say, those laws just came into effect, and so we're updating our policy to be current with the current law.
Yeah, but some of this was in the works longer ago than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the idea that this would or could undermine negotiation. I just want to address from my perspective, my vote is like kind of what Jim said, which was, I think our policies allow us to bargain. I don't mean these policies, just me, as I read them and helped work on them for months, thought of the policies as not dictating the way a contract would be written. I don't think this should dictate a way a contract should be written if our team feels that the negotiation needs to make a change. Like I don't know what other people's feeling on that is, but that's my take, is that the sense that these policies put a thumb or create a precedent, I mean, they're what we're going to live with until we change, but does that mean that we aren't open to negotiation? For me, the answer is no.
That's kind of how I see it is we have policies in place. We're updating them to be current with legal. And if we enter into bargaining and one of these policies is one they want to discuss, okay, we discuss it. And then once we come to whatever the agreement is, if we have to make a change to a policy, we will. but you kind of have, I mean, I've been on this board a long time. I've been on a lot of policy committee meetings, is we need to be current with law. And the fact that we actually didn't change that language kind of says that we weren't doing anything purposeful. So, just an opinion.
No.
My take, yeah, I agree with so much that it's been said. I think, my feeling is that this reflects current state of the law. I don't believe that they were written I appreciate where this perception could come from. If you didn't know Northville, if you were just kind of, parachuting in, but I just don't think it's an attempt to undermine negotiations in the future. And I think we've been talking about this for weeks, if not months at this point. So
Not a year.
So, right, I'm fully in favor. I understand the points that are made here. I don't know that I necessarily agree with them, and I'm comfortable with what we've drafted here and what we have in front of us personally.
And I think we are a board that can change the policy as need be, right?
As negotiations.
Yeah.
As negotiations proceed.
So I'll just make one other comment not related to this, unless there's more to be said on this topic. No more. So just for the public, the NHS spring break trip to Costa Rica, the word spring break in there just was in reference to the fact it was going to occur during spring break. It's not an official spring break, sponsored trip, so to speak. It's just a reference for anybody who's listening. I don't want people to think that we're
What is going on in
the
Northville?
district is sponsoring spring break. It's just the fact that it's happening during that week.
Good clarification.
So just
We don't sponsor any spring breaks.
All right, I appreciate it, Ms. Peck. Thank you, and thank you to the committee again, and for folks who chimed in on this and your insights and thoughts. Anything else before we vote? All right, all those in favor of adopting our consent resolutions?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. That was number 5 on our agenda. That brings us to number 6, our communications. Ms. Stewart, please.
All right, we have received communication through the NPS BOE at northvilleschools.org email address, as well as the Northville Youth Network Program Report, February 2024.
All right, thank you. That brings us to our superintendent's report. Whoever, please.
Thank you. So Sunday, we had our NHS open house, 81 families coming from within and the district, and also, I believe, outside of the district. And we actually had a kindergarten student show up. The family just saw open house, so they decided to stop in, and they thought it was a district-wide open house, but it was for the high school. So hopefully, that made a good impression. Kindergartner will matriculate with us on up there in that piece of it.
I think that's awesome.
Yes, it was great, and thank you so much for the team that put that together and made sure that was a good experience. And then I think allowing or asking for, I see there's one person in the audience that might want to comment in public comment, and then we have 3 school board members here who could speak to it. Because they were part of the whole thing. While Darby and Rebecca and I stopped in at different points through the 2 days of training, we had over 30 of our Northville parents participate in the same restorative practices training that all of our staff members have received. And perhaps you could provide some context on that. And knowing that we have some things to attend to and closed after this, President Wilson, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions before we move to our first of 2 opportunities for public comment? Actually, yeah. I do have a card up here. Apologies. So it's our first of 2 opportunities for public comment. Mr. Alvarez, I'll welcome you to the podium here. You know the rules, 3 minutes. Just remind us one more time of your tie to the district. Yeah.
My name is John Alvarez. I live here in Northville and I have a son. Well, grandson, but I'm adopting him, so he will be my son pretty soon. So anyways, thank you all for your time. As you see, 1 or 2 issues is normal, right? But as you see, JC has had many. It's been my pleasure to listen to you guys. I believe you all do your very best to help as many people as you can. And I've listened to you guys, even though you may not think I am. I'm back there, almost finished a whole book. But you do try to help as many people as you can, like just now. And you do have empathy for those that you can't. That's a fact. You all know that you can't. I think you and all of Northville public service positions has done a wonderful job to make Northville what it is. I moved here from Potomac, Maryland. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. That's where I moved from. And it's pretty much like this, but a little different. Your communications to parents are exceptional. I believe you provide as many programs as you can for all of our students and parents while fairly balancing your financial concerns. You do a very good job at that. I think he's your number one guy, right? I did my best to tell you the truth, everything I've ever said. And everything I put in there, 99% of it, I can document. This may sound like the last time, but it's not. So with that, again, you guys sit here and you make a lot of big decisions. I wish more parents would come in here and see all the effort you guys really do, especially the ones that you can't help. I wish they would come in here and listen to you guys. They would have a better understanding of what you guys really do. I have. Greatest thing, one of the best things I've ever done. And I was in Costa Rica once. And I was helping the DEA. I was there for different reasons. So I want to thank everyone, okay? And I will see you next month. Anybody have any questions? Thank you. I have seen a difference in Joseph, okay? He has issues with crowds that just came about. So he comes in late and leaves early, 5-10 minutes. But other than that, I want to thank everyone, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I do see one more card coming. Go ahead, Mr. Frazier, if you're ready. You know the rules. 3 minutes. Just give us a little intro. Your ties to the district, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Ron Frazier. I have a 5th grader at Winchester and an 8th grader at Meads Mill. And I just want to thank the entire district for the effort you've put into on restorative practices, the board, our superintendent, and the whole CULT team. You had the 2-day training that you opened up to the PTA staff and then opened up to the whole community. I had a chance to participate in that, and it was really wonderful. I went in with some certain expectations. I had gone through a couple of PTA meetings. We had like 15-minute or an hour training here and there, picked up some bits and pieces, and I took them home and used them, and I was pretty impressed, and I had some high hopes. But like, I went in thinking this was something that I could use with my family, and I walked out realizing this is something we can use for the whole community. I can use this in my work, with robotics at Winchester and PTA work. We actually sat down as a group, several of us, and we came up with a plan for like how to use circles to discuss PTA fundraising. So we didn't just like do theoretical stuff. We actually came away with things that we could actually take out into the community and use. So it was a wonderful experience. I had a great time with all the parents, and I thank the board members who came there and Rebecca for showing up. And it was great you sat in there and you listened. You got to hear all the feedback from the community, thoughts about after we did our first day. Parents went home and thought about where maybe the failures of this might be, where the parts we might not be looking at to make sure this continues on. And so it was great for you to be there to hear everything that all the parents had to say. And I think it was a really great experience. So I want to thank everyone for that. And also, I just want to give a quick shout out that today was PTA Advocacy Day in Lansing, and several of the board members went with us out there, and I want to thank the school administration at both the high school, Hillside, and Meads Mill, and also system principal at Hillside, Mooch. Yeah,
Moochie.
Yes. I want to thank her. She showed up with us, and it was great to get the students out there. They had some great questions. They they learned a lot about, I think they learned a lot about how, legislation and advocacy works. And some of them, you could see they had done their homework going out there, so that they had questions about things they had researched, and it was a wonderful experience. So I'm hoping in the future that we can kind of push this some more and get more kids next year to go. But we had 17 kids, 16 middle schoolers and 1 high schooler this year. So that was really impressive. And I hope we can get more next year. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, public comment. Last call on our first opportunity. All right, we will move on to any added agenda items. Reserving anything? Dr. Weber, anybody else? All right, close that. Questions, comments from board members. Item number 11. Anything?
So I circulated a couple earlier this morning.
Second public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
Yep.
This brings us to our second of 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. Going once, going twice. That brings us to number 11 on our agenda. As promised, questions, comments from board members. Who's up first?
Okay, sorry.
Prescott.
I didn't want to, just blurt these. So just this morning, some of you may have seen in your email some things that were just, I didn't want to lose. And I had missed our last meeting. So I've been a little out of touch and I just didn't want to lose these pieces. One of them was, okay, so the 31 AA money. And then thank you, Mike, you indicate, so what I understand, if I'm understanding, is that kind of whatever budgeting we had for that money, a little bit is in the works because the money is actually, the pie has been expanded by the state and you're working on what the line items will be going forward.
Right. So basically, to kind of take a step back, initially we had to submit a budget by December 10th, which we did. And that was basically based on estimated headcount. So, and it totaled $1.5 million. So we did a budget that was inclusive of the allocation of $400,000 for the wellness center. Now we just learned just yesterday that our allocation has gone up by the state to $1.7 million. So we basically, what we've done is we do have to submit another budget by 5:30 on March 20th. So we have to think about how we want to, and we had some discussion at Finance Subcommittee about how we might want to allocate that additional money. One of the areas we talked about is talking about perhaps mirroring what we do for teacher interns, a social worker intern to pay, put some stipends in place that would allow us to bring maybe some social worker interns on board is one option. And that would be about $48,000. So we still have about $160,000 of how we would have to allocate to another area. So.
Okay, but, so Mike, I guess my question had been, so there's 400,000 freed up or not? Or it's just gonna, are you just gonna leave what you had before and then budget for the new money, if you will?
Right. So one of the things we talked about at Finance Sub was initially to leave the 400,000, but then one of the options is to take the 160,000 and as a provisional, just put it in along with the wellness center, not knowing exactly what we're going to do there.
And a clear thing we talked about is the wellness center does not necessarily mean clinic. When we, for all of the dialogue, one of the clear things that came from the public is mental health is something we should consider, right? And we need more talk about it. We talked about it as living at a placeholder, and I've actually questioned is the right terminology
Wellness center.
List? Wellness center, or is it should be something else? But it is really not to be confused with the health clinic.
Right.
It's not to be confused with that. It's a placeholder to deal with mental health, although we don't necessarily know as a team what that is defined at. Luckily, the state doesn't require us to have this defined in great detail at this moment.
And the spending has to be by
September 30th, 2025.
2025.
Oh, so that's good.
So we have some time. And then the reason I was asking about this is because I know when we first looked at the budget and it wasn't, hugely detailed. I had the question about the restorative practices training. And
Right.
I know I didn't ever connect with Rebecca, that's my bad, but I did want to understand where we are in using that money that was budgeted, or like if that also is gonna wrap around for multiple years, or just wondering where we are with that?
So
It was a big chunk.
it is a big chunk. And this year was the bigger of the two because we did the district-wide training, and then we're building in our trainer of trainer models so that we're not going back to that contract company, essentially. We were building our own experts in-house. That was really important to us for sustainability. The other big chunk of money that is being used is coaching. So IIRP has coaches for our buildings, and each building has 8 visits from a coach. And those are I can't describe how important they are for really making it come alive. You get an opportunity to actually practice with somebody in front of you, kind of sometimes it's an I do, we do, you do. We're practicing some of these really complex items. Restorative practice is very easy on the kind of the baseline of it. Our circles and building relationships and teaching us, the 2, the 4, the width. Those things are real. I don't want to say basic. They're very important in understanding and building relationships. But those are not the things that our coaches are really supporting our principals on. When we get into conferencing with folks where harm has occurred, and we're building those relationships and mending those relationships together. We're not, they are, right? So the coaching has been really instrumental in that. I could give several examples of where that coaching has been used in that. Even today, if I'm correct, maybe it was yesterday. It was yesterday. It was today.
Yeah, we'll talk.
This is a really long way for me to get to next year. So we're on track for spending the money this year for what was allocated last year. Next year, the money that we have allocated is for additional coaching. It's not for additional training from them. We'll have our own trainers in place. It's really to continue that coaching model.
And the grant buckets that we used are designated for mental health aspects, and this fit in there. So, grants can be restrictive, or they can be more general. Like the 31AA allows us a lot of latitude, but we have to be able to prove the point that it ties in with mental health or physical well-being, safety.
Yeah.
And so from a general fund aspect in our RP work, we haven't taken anything from general fund. It's all been collection of funds.
Yeah, and just to
grants,
reiterate, the whole goal of this full year implementation, which is a really, and the trainer that we had on Friday and Saturday was just over the moon with the process, the way we were going about this, because whole district change is how you really move that ball faster to the finish line, which is, the best relationships with kids and with families and with community. If the coaching part of this is going to even kind of seal in for us that we're going to get this there, and this is going to just be a matter of culture. It's not going to be a matter of, maybe we'll do this year. It becomes the way we do business as an organization, in our classrooms, and then in our community. So.
An added point that we talked about in finance on this subject was, again, we're required to turn this into the state for placeholders, but no money can actually be spent. So in other words, if it's $300,000, it still has to come back to the board before final approval. So we would have a chance to look at the specific details. So this doesn't give tacit approval to spend $300,000 and we never get to see the specifics of it. So it would, at some point next year or the end of this year, whatever, you're going to have to come back to the board and lay out the details of it. And we'll have a chance to, make any comments at that point. So.
Okay,
It
great.
still has to follow board process is the point. Can't be spent without us reviewing it.
Well, thank you to finance. I know you sat through that whole meeting to now have to recount it, and there will be minutes. The only other 2 quick points I have were wanting to make sure we keep up on the cell phone away for the day K8, which you all saw, and then the other one was
Test scores.
which one?
Test scores.
Oh, the middle school. Just wanting to make sure we hear back about that. And, I know RJ, you said that Aaron would let us know on that, which is great.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back next week at Hillside. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So I did want to bring up the RP training. So Kim and Lisa and I were able to do the 2-day training. And I mean, Ron already talked. It was great. It was fantastic. A couple of points that I wanted to make. I think it's going to be amazingly helpful to have our own trainers in our staff so that we can do trainings that aren't 2 full days, because it's a huge commitment for community members who aren't getting paid to be there to give up 2 full days and go to this training. So I think it's going to be really beneficial to have our own staff trained so that we can then, do an hour presentation at a PTA meeting and tell more parents about, what it is that the kids are doing, what's happening in the schools, and, potentially do like a half-day training for somebody that wants a little deeper dive, but still not 2 days. So I think that's going to be really exciting going into the future. It was really amazing to have Rebecca come on the morning of the second day in the morning, because a lot of parents had a lot of very specific questions about how is this getting implemented and how is it going to be sustainable? And it was really good to have Rebecca there to actually address in real time some of those questions. And one that I do think, just from a policy standpoint, that came up again later was, as our time with this goes on and we can see a little bit more concretely the dividends that we're getting, like, is there a reduction in suspensions? Are we seeing benefits, like actual benefits from this? In our disciplinary actions and things like that. And then will it be solidified maybe a little more in our policies reflecting suspension time for different behavior issues that come up? So that was one thing that maybe in the future we can address in policy subcommittee. And then I was talking with our trainer, Henry, what was his last name?
I think.
We just had first name badges. I can't remember his last name. I was talking with him about the fact that it was every staff member, IT and operations and like across the board, everyone's been trained, and that blew his mind, first of all. But then he had a good point that gives our district a good opportunity for the staff members that don't have a lot of contact with students, to send them into seminar classes, and keep their skills brushed up on these circles. And maybe that is a way that we can introduce our students to all of the important jobs that keep this school district running. So that was his idea. So I told him I would pass that on to you guys. But did you guys have anything to share as well?
I mean, I could talk about it for days.
I know, I know.
I think the thing for me is that when I look at like how to build community, right, that I thought, I walked into the room, I was like, oh, I know all these people. But I didn't actually know them. I felt like through that process, I got to know them so much better. And I thought the first day, I was reflecting on this, the first day, so we have lunch, right? And I'm like, I can go home. It's like 5 minutes from here. And so, but you and I, we went together, right? We picked up our lunch, we came back, we sat at the table. And I was like, was it a missed opportunity to bring other people along with us for lunch that first day? So the second day, there was a woman that had sat next to me the whole time. I'd never met her before. I think she was from Germany. So I felt like we had like this, like, I don't know, connection or whatever, this like German vibe, whatever. And she had a question. She's like, I want to ask you a question over lunch. So she came with us. So I thought even the way the structure of the time was, even though it was 2 full days and it was on a weekend, like it gave an opportunity to have different conversations with people that I'm going to have in the parking lot after pickup or whatever. So I think the opportunity for community building was really significant. I also think it normalizes like language around affect, feelings, impact. That I went home and tried it with my daughter, who is so messy. I don't know how she's going to be anyone's roommate because she is terrible as far as keeping her room clean. So I tried it, and I think I generally am pretty good with like sharing my emotions and asking for people to do things. But the specific language of the process, it feels like it's silly to say that it's magical, but I said, I would be so happy if I came home from this training and your room was cleaned up like you told me you would do. And I came home and her room was cleaned up. And I mean, like literally.
What did you say again?
I know. I was just,
How did that work?
she also was, I think, happy to show me that she did it. And like, it was like a really nice thing. And there was no yelling. There was no threatening. Like, I'm going to take away your phone until your room is cleaned up, which is often how it goes. But I keep thinking about like, we know that we are in this mental health crisis, right? So how do we manage it? Like we're thinking about what's relational practices. It's a chunk of a resource, right? And yet when everybody when everybody in the district who is a staff member working with kids has common language to say, I'd be so happy if you did this, or I'm disappointed, or I'm surprised, or like using yourself in the conversation is so different than saying that made me disappointed. It's like we are in a relationship. And so how do people heal? Relationship, right? That is how people heal. That is how people grow. It's not just like through a computer, although I did send her a text. I would really appreciate it, but still it's the relationship between her and I. So I think how do we start to move out of a crisis and into like an opportunity to heal? It's through relationships. So I know it's called restorative practices. That's the group. I think in our community, we're calling it relational practices, and that's what it is. And I had this aha moment, like Rebecca keeps talking about, this is how we do the work. And I was like, oh, it really is, because it's about relationships and the words that you use, and we're doing it together. I'm not doing it. I have been for the last however many months school's been in session. I have been doing my daughter's laundry for her every week because it drives me crazy that's on the floor. But that's not actually teaching her how to do it. Or also, if the laundry is kind of a metaphor, we got to do it with each other. We all are working together. I'm not doing it for her. I'm not doing it to her. I'm not throwing her clothes out. That was my other thought. They're not on the front lawn. I would beg them up. Whenever she wanted them again, that would be doing it to her. But so I just think in that way, it was really powerful that it's simple, but also profound. So I have my little card. There's 4 questions. And some people talk about carrying it in their wallet, maybe the back of their phone. I might take a picture and then it just pops up because it's just accessible.
That's smart.
It's not rocket science. It's relationships.
Right.
Right. So I don't know. Those are my ramblings, but
I don't have a lot more that's different to add. I think what sticks in my mind is 80% of this is relationships. So I come out of a restorative justice kind of frame in public health. And I know that we differentiated this from, restorative practice. And then you just differentiated it on a more finer grain level, which is relational practices. So, it is kind of a continuum, but what I would say, what caught my attention is that this is not just about responding to a harm. That's 20% of the time that these practices are used. 80% of the time is having communication exchanges that humanize each other. And it's interesting how what we say can dehumanize. And it's like, I'm going to take your phone away if you don't.
right.
Not that, but right, or I'm so angry at you. So, flipping the script, it was practicing flipping the script. And it wasn't that easy, really, if you're not used to that. I thought it was going to be easier, but, I had to really be consciously thoughtful about how I responded. But I also reflected on the fact that we had been exposed on our, when we're in buildings, in particularly elementary school buildings, but also at the high school, in demonstrations of students running a circle. And I understood what stuck in my mind is, I think it was Ammerman, it could have been Moraine, when we saw a circle demonstrated in the 2nd grade where they have a AAA kind of organizational framework where we're all together and we have an opportunity to either give an appreciation or to give an apology or an aha moment that we wanted to share in the circle. And I didn't really understand exactly what was going on and why. I liked circles, but I didn't understand the profound power of a circle. And I just know as a faculty member, students hated when I put them in a circle because they couldn't hide, right? They couldn't be on their phones, but everybody could see everybody. There was no fringe. Everybody was in a same plane and looking at each other. So I understood after this training, I experienced deeply what was really going on and why it's important for second graders to have an opening circle at the beginning of the week and a closing circle at the end of the week, and how it doesn't interrupt academics. It's not detracting. This is not a win-lose. This is a win-win. And our littlest littles, who will now have many years of reinforcement, when they, they're going to carry it forward with them. It's just like our lighthouse elementary schools and leadership, leader in me kinds of messages. And, it's really just amplifying the work that's being done to another level. And, and then we're going to get graduating seniors who say, who reflect back on just how profoundly they've been affected. I anticipate that. So it's very profound. The second day was deeply, deeply emotional. And just based on the relationships that were built in that first day. And so, we're adults, but I can see that impact will come along for our kids too. And in the mutual sharing and caring and the willingness to face challenges together and to be empathetic when somebody has a challenge. And I just think it's got a lot to offer the climate. Now, the one thing I would say is that on day 2, everybody wanted deliverables like next week on Monday, or how's it going to be by the end of the school year? Where this is a culture change.
Yeah.
Let's give it some time.
Well, and I think that's what stood out to me too, right? That there's early adopters, and then there's the middle people that okay, they start to see that it works, and then there are people that are just resistant, and it's okay. It takes time, right? It's just like any opportunity, right? That not everybody bought their iPhone the first week it was available, but how many people around the room have an iPhone,
right,
or an iPad, right? So I just think it's like there's that.
It takes time. It takes
time for it to, I don't know,
come to full flourish.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing thing to see. And the advantage of having 2 back-to-back 8-hour days is that you really do see the intensivity of change in a very 6 hours will seem long, but it was amazing, the difference from beginning to end in just those 2 days. So that's what I would say.
And luckily, Mr. Koski was there Saturday morning, because I burst into his office and I said, "We need Kleenex, stat." And so he went through the office and found all the Kleenex boxes, and so it's a good thing he works tirelessly.
Think about how when people are distracted by something emotional and they don't have space to share it, they're not able to learn, right? So we did the first check-in, and that's when we needed the tissues.
Yeah.
And then we got onto the business of learning, right? Like I think everybody walked out with their books and their resources and their thinking, and we went to lunch and talked about whatever. Yeah. And then, it was
really good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So I have my books here, if anyone would like to borrow them. They do have my name in them, which means you can't take them. I keep them forever. But it seems like it's just very, it's profound, but it's kind of simple too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the things that you would want to synthesize in one experience.
When might be the next opportunity for any of us to be to take part in this, or to be trained by you, the new trainers?
The new trainers.
Well, it's not going to be us. It'll be the staff members that go through a special training of trainers.
I have such a hard time with that. So Darby is she's already working hard on getting those trainings set up. She's got a training set up for 10 right after we get out of school in June, and then she has a couple more set up for August. So I mean, you're going to be seeing something, it could be as early as next August, starting to offer all sorts of different, I called it, I think on Saturday morning, I called it a buffet.
I do like a
Of
buffet.
relational practice.
But there could be options.
Oh,
It
I
could be a
see.
1
Oh,
hour
right.
or a 4 hour or a day or,
Prime rib.
I know,
Right.
or
One of
just
those.
crab legs, you know.
Salad.
Sweet rolls.
That's right. All right, no, it sounds fantastic. Anything else? Any other questions, comments?
I just wanted to quickly comment, because we didn't have a meeting last week, that last week was Inclusion Week that culminated with the basketball game. And I just want to thank everyone that's involved in that and the unified program. I love everything that our district does to make sure that, break down those barriers and those walls for all students, because we all know, I think it goes without saying, that all students benefit when we have those kind of programs. I work with students that are in a unified community, and they just love that time and experience and interaction, and I'm so happy that we continue that. So please pass along gratitude for that, and I just wanted to give that a little lift up about what a great program it is. And even though we highlight it within a week, it's something that's ongoing in our buildings year round.
It was at the high school. I appreciate you bringing that up. Did everybody see that, like the chain of all the kids' names outside of the forum room there of the high school? Every single high school student had a name in the chain link, paper chain thing. It was very cool. So inclusion really is everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Excellent, all right. Well, that brings us inevitably to agenda item number 12, and I'll hand it over to Ms. McIntyre.
Okay, I'd like to bring forth motion 85, that the board convene in closed session pursuant to Public Act 267 of the Open Meetings Act under Section 89C, negotiations as presented.
Support.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Dr. Campbell-Boytel that we convene in closed session.
Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, I was
Yeah,
just
right.
gonna say, I think we need a roll call.
Ms. Stewart?
All right, President Wilson,
Yes.
Vice President McIntyre.
Yes.
Treasurer Campbell-Boytel,
Yes.
Trustee Mazurek,
Yes.
Trustee Meyer,
Yes.
Trustee Prescott,
Yes.
Secretary Stewart, yes.
All right, so we will be adjourning, or convening, I'm sorry, momentarily to closed session for those folks in the public. We will be in closed session for some period of time. We will come back, however, the very high likelihood, Mr. Frazier and Ms. Kane, is that we will not be coming back for anything substantive. I can't guarantee that, but that is very likely. But we will be coming back to adjourn, so you're welcome to stay around. Absolutely. All right, so it is 7:32, and I will convene us to closed session.
Yes. Everyone can catch up on their reading and their quiet time.